Megan White's footsteps echoed through the children's hospital on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Every morning at 7:30 sharp, she walked down this hallway without fail. It was a habit she had maintained for 4 years, never missing a single day. She tried to keep her white nursing shoes quiet, but she couldn't help walking briskly. Her maternal instinct to see her daughter Emily as soon as possible quickened her pace. "Good morning, Emily." When Megan opened the door to the hospital room, she always began with this greeting. Her 10-year-old daughter lay quietly sleeping on white sheets. The rhythmic sound of the ventilator marked time in this room. Emily's hair maintained its beautiful silky blonde color thanks to her mother's daily careful brushing. Her cheeks had grown a bit thinner, but her adorable sleeping face remained unchanged. Megan pulled up a chair and took her daughter's hand. Emily's small hand was cold, like a porcelain doll. Still, by holding this hand, Megan could feel that her daughter was still here with her. "It's such beautiful weather today. Look out the window, the cherry trees are starting to bloom." While talking one-sidedly, Megan carefully trimmed her daughter's nails and began massaging her hands. She performed the techniques taught by the physical therapist every single day without fail. The doctors might say it was meaningless, but for Megan, this was precious time that kept hope alive. At 10 in the morning, Megan left the hospital for work. She worked part-time 4 days a week as a medical administrator at Columbus General Hospital. She would have liked to work more, but she needed to reserve time for Emily's care. The salary wasn't much, but this job with its medical insurance benefits was a lifeline for her. During lunch break, she returned to the children's hospital to bring Emily lunch. Though her daughter survived only on nutrition through a feeding tube, Megan still sat beside her. Even so, Megan ate her homemade sandwich while telling her daughter about the day's events. "Mr. Johnson was discharged today. You remember him, that kind old man who always told jokes. He's praying for your recovery too." After finishing her afternoon work, all her evening and night hours belonged to Emily. Megan would cleanse her daughter's body, wash her hair, and dress her in fresh pajamas. Throughout this time, she talked constantly about things that happened at school, funny TV shows she'd watched, memories from the past. Child support from her ex-husband David was $500 a month, the legally mandated minimum amount. While Emily's medical expenses were partially covered by insurance, the out-of-pocket costs for rehabilitation supplies and special nutritional foods were far from insignificant. Megan kept a household budget, living month to month on the edge. Today was Emily's 10th birthday. Megan brought a small cake and quietly celebrated at her daughter's bedside. She sang, "Happy birthday to you," in a soft voice and lit the candles. On behalf of Emily, Megan blew out the candles herself. "Happy birthday, Emily. Next year, and the year after that, we'll celebrate together forever." Tears rolled down Megan's cheeks. She was remembering 10 years ago when Emily was born. Back then, her husband David was there too, and they were a happy family of 3. In the maternity ward, looking at newborn Emily, David had promised to protect this child for life. At 9 o'clock at night, visiting hours ended. Megan gently kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "See you tomorrow." She held Emily's hand, imprinting its warmth in her heart before slowly leaving the room. When she got home, she quickly ate a simple dinner for one and prepared for the next day. She selected books to read to Emily and scanned the newspaper for new topics to discuss. Before going to bed, Megan always said a prayer, the same unchanging prayer for her daughter's recovery. She had continued this life for 4 years. Sometimes she was exhausted and felt crushed by despair. But Megan never gave up. As a mother, she couldn't even consider abandoning Emily. Tomorrow, she would go to the hospital again to hold her daughter's hand. 4 years ago in spring, the White family was at the height of happiness. David's promotion at his ET company had been decided, and Megan was considering returning to nursing school, which had been her dream. Most importantly, 6-year-old Emily delighted her parents with new discoveries every day. Daddy, let's go to the park today. Emily jumped out of bed on Saturday morning and ran into the living room. David was reading the newspaper while drinking coffee, but seeing his daughter's sparkling ice, he naturally smiled. Of course, Princess. Which park do you want to go to? Maplewood Park. They have a new slide. Emily jumped up and down with excitement. Megan looked back from the kitchen, watching the exchange between father and daughter with a warm smile. David was an ideal husband who, no matter how busy work got, always made time for family on weekends. Tall with kind brown eyes, he was the perfect hero for Emily. Shall I make lunch? Megan suggested, and Emily clapped her hands with joy. Mommy's sandwiches are the best. Standing together in the kitchen preparing lunch was their weekend tradition. David peeled hard-boiled eggs, Megan made sandwiches, and Emily washed the fruit. In these ordinary daily moments, there was certain happiness. Maplewood Park was a beautiful park on the outskirts of Columbus. The playground area, surrounded by old maple trees, featured slides, swings, and jungle gyms that met the latest safety standards. On weekends, it bustled with many families, and children's laughter echoed throughout. Look! That slide is so tall. Emily pointed to the newly installed spiral slide. About 3 meters high and made of colorful plastic, it was designed to stir children's sense of adventure. Be careful climbing up, Megan called out worriedly, but Emily was already running up the stairs. David sat down on a bench and put his arm around Megan's shoulders. Emily is really active. She's curious like you. She's fearless like you. Megan rested her head on her husband's chest. Until that moment, Megan never doubted that life would continue smoothly. A loving husband, a healthy and bright daughter, a stable home. Everything seemed perfect. The fateful day was a peaceful Sunday in April. Emily unusually wanted to go to the park alone. She said she had made plans with her friend Katie. Since Megan had household chores piling up and the park was only a 5-minute walk from home, she granted Emily's request. Come back in 2 hours. Don't go with strangers. I know, Mommy. I'm 6 years old already, Emily answered proudly and left with her small backpack. That was the last peaceful time they spent as a family. Around 3 in the afternoon, Megan's cell phone rang. Looking at the number, she saw an unfamiliar area code. A bad feeling crossed her mind, but when she answered, it was from the hospital's emergency department. Is this Mrs. White? Your daughter Emily has been in an accident and is currently receiving treatment here. Megan's world instantly lost all color. The doctor's voice on the phone sounded distant, and strength left her knees. An accident. It was a fall from playground equipment. She suffered severe head trauma. Please come immediately. David was at a company golf tournament. Megan called her husband's cell phone with shaking hands, but couldn't get through. She had no choice but to call a taxi alone and rush to the hospital. The hospital emergency department was bustling, with doctors and nurses in white coats moving busily back and forth. When Megan gave her name at reception, the attending physician immediately appeared. The middle-aged male doctor led Megan to a private room with a serious expression. Your daughter fell from playground equipment about 3 meters high and severely struck her head. Currently, there is serious brain damage and she is in a comatose state. The doctor's explanation continued mercilessly. Medical terms like brain hemorrhage, unconscious, and poor prognosis tore at Megan's heart. What are the chances of recovery? Megan asked in a trembling voice. After a long silence, the doctor slowly shook his head. To be honest, the situation is very severe. Cases of recovery from such serious brain damage are rare. When Megan first saw Emily in the ICU, it took time for her to recognize her as her daughter. The small body with bandages wrapped around her head and connected to countless tubes looked like a different person from her once active daughter. Only the sound of the ventilator indicated that Emily was still alive. David rushed to the hospital 3 hours after the accident. His face was pale as he stood frozen in front of the ICU, and when he saw Emily, he broke down crying. "How could this happen?" David repeated over and over. For the first few months, David was devoted. He came to the hospital every day, taking turns with Megan in caring for Emily. He always attended meetings with doctors, trying to believe in any possibility of recovery. However, changes began to appear as time passed. After 6 months, David's hospital visits started to decrease. He cited being busy with work, but Megan could see that her husband was escaping from reality. After a year passed, David's attitude became more pronounced. After receiving a diagnosis from doctors that the chances of recovery are extremely low, he significantly reduced his time at the hospital. Instead, his overtime and business trips increased, and he spent less time at home. "You're enough on your own," David said. "There's nothing I can do by going there." Megan tried to understand her husband's pain. The accident was unbearable reality for a father too. But Emily needed both parents. Even if unconscious, she might sense the presence of those who love her. When 2 years had passed, David dropped a bombshell. "I want a divorce." Megan stopped preparing dinner. "What are you saying? If we continue like this, our lives will be over too. Emily isn't coming back. You must feel it deep down too. Emily is alive. She's our daughter. It's ridiculous to sacrifice the rest of our lives for someone in a vegetative state." David's words were cold. At that moment, Megan realized that Emily was already dead in her husband's mindestens. For David, his unconscious daughter was no longer family, but merely a burden. The divorce proceedings became a bitter battle. David claimed Emily's care was Megan's choice and tried to minimize child support. Megan fought desperately, but realistically, supporting Emily alone had limits. When the divorce was finalized, Megan was completely alone. She had no family to rely on. Friends had also begun to distance themselves over time. Megan was the only person in the world who continued to believe in Emily's recovery. Still, she didn't give up. She couldn't even consider abandoning her daughter. Even if the whole world gave up, she as a mother would believe until the end. That was Megan's resolve. Megan woke up before her alarm clock rang. After 4 years of habit, her body naturally adjusted to Emily's schedule. Outside the window it was still dim, and streetlights illuminated the quiet residential neighborhood. She got ready as usual and packed the breakfast she made for Emily in her bag. Though her daughter only received nutrition through a feeding tube, Megan brought homemade muffins and fruit salad every morning. For when she wakes up someday, that was her belief. When she parked in the children's hospital parking lot, the eastern sky was beginning to turn orange. Megan took a deep breath as always, preparing her heart for the start of the day. For Emily's sake, she had to be a strong mother today too. "Good morning, Emily. It's such beautiful weather again today." When she entered the room, Megan felt something was different. Something was not the same as usual. Emily's breathing rhythm seemed to have changed slightly. It might have been her imagination, but a mother's intuition honed over 4 years of daily observation was sharp. She pulled up a chair and took her daughter's hand. At that moment, Megan's heart leaped. Emily's hand had responded faintly. It was a microscopic movement, as if squeezing back. "Emily," Megan called out in a trembling voice. However, there was no change in her daughter's expression, and her closed eyelids remained quiet. Megan thought it might have been her imagination and squeezed her daughter's hand again. This time she felt it clearly. Emily's finger had moved slightly. Nurse call, Megan frantically pressed the bedside button. A few minutes later, Nurse Sarah rushed in. "What's wrong, Mrs. White?" Emily's hand moved. "I felt it for sure," Megan's voice was high with excitement. Sarah shook her head with a gentle expression. "Ma'am, sometimes you can feel such illusions. You've been working so hard for 4 years. Perhaps you should rest a little. Megan felt frustrated but could understand the nurse's words. She had tried to find small changes through wishful thinking many times before. But this time was definitely different. In the morning, Megan didn't leave Emily's sight. She massaged as usual and continued talking to her. Then around 1 in the afternoon, it happened. Emily's eyelids trembled slowly. Megan gasped. This time there was no mistake. She could see her daughter's eyelids trying to open slightly. It was a sign she hadn't seen in 4 years. Emily, Mommy is here, Megan spoke in a tearful voice. The trembling of her eyelids gradually grew stronger, and finally Emily's eyes opened slightly. Unfocused blue eyes gazed vaguely at the ceiling. Call Dr. Chen immediately, Megan kept pressing the nurse call button. This time the entire medical team rushed in. Dr. Chen, the attending physician, was the neurosurgeon who had been treating Emily for 4 years. With an expression of disbelief, he began various tests. Pupillreflex, response to pain stimuli, EEG measurements. Every test showed that Emily's consciousness level had clearly improved. The doctors couldn't hide their excitement and confusion. While it's difficult to explain medically, Dr. Chen chose his words carefully, there is definitely improvement in consciousness level. This can only be called a miracle. That evening, Emily showed her first response to her mother's voice. When Megan called Emily, her daughter's eyes slowly turned toward her mother. Do you recognize Mommy? Emily, it's Mommy. Emily's lips moved slightly. It was a soundless noise, but she was clearly trying to say something. Megan brought her ear close to her daughter's lips. The faint sound she heard was, Mommy. Megan burst into tears. It was her daughter's voice that she had waited 4 years to hear. Even if it was just a whisper, the fact that Emily recognized her mother and called to her was a miracle. The next morning, Emily's consciousness was even clearer. She still couldn't move her body, but her eyes clearly focused and gazed at her mother. Emily, can you see Mommy's face? Her daughter nodded slightly. At that Gesture, tears welled up in Megan's eyes again. Does anything hurt? Do you want water? Emily shook her head and answered in a weak voice. Mommy, I was scared. It's okay now. Mommy will always be here, Megan gently stroked her daughter's cheek. Emily stared at her mother for a while, but eventually showed an expression as if remembering something important. Memories from 4 years ago seemed to be gradually returning. Mommy, Emily's voice was trembling. I remember that day. Megan's heart beat rapidly. Which day? The day I fell at the park, fear appeared in Emily's eyes. But Mommy? Her daughter paused and took a deep breath. Then she spoke words that would completely overturn Megan's world. I didn't fall. I was pushed. Megan felt the blood drain from her face. What did you say? There was a pretty lady. At first she was nice. But suddenly her face became scary, Emily continued trembling. She pushed me on top of the slide. She said, "You're in the way." In Megan's mind, all her memories began to reorganize. Who else was at the accident scene? Were there any witnesses? Was security camera footage checked? At the time, her daughter's life was the top priority, and she hadn't had the luxury of pursuing details about the accident. What did that lady look like? Megan asked with a trembling voice. She had golden hair and wore white clothes. She was very pretty, but her eyes were scary. Emily gripped her mother's hand tightly. Mommy, will that person come back? Megan tried to smile to reassure her daughter, but her heart was like a storm. If Emily's memory was accurate, this wasn't an accident but attempted murder. And the family tragedy that had continued for 4 years was caused by someone's malice. Emily, do you remember anything more detailed about that person? What did her voice sound like? Any other characteristics? Her daughter tried desperately to trace her memories. Her voice was high and very angry. She said, "If you disappeared. Also, she had something shiny on her hand. Something shiny. A ring. Very big and sparkly. A dark premonition spread through Megan's chest. If Emily's testimony was true, she would have to report it to the police. But at the same time, she had no idea why her daughter would have been targeted or what the motive could be. "Mommy, do you believe what I said?" Anxiety appeared in Emily's eyes. "Of course, Emily. Mommy believes your words." Megan squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. "And I will uncover the truth." That night, Megan headed to the police station. She needed to record her daughter's testimony and have the incident from 4 years ago reinvestigated. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, but her determination was firm. Emily's 4 years of suffering, the family's collapse, and her own lonely battle. All of it might have been caused by someone's calculated crime. Megan resolved to fight for her daughter and for the truth. The fluorescent lights of the Columbus police station illuminated Megan's tired face. It was past 10 at night, but Detective Michael Rodriguez was seriously listening to Megan's story. With 20 years of experience, the veteran detective intuited that something important was hidden in this case. "I've reviewed the incident records from 4 years ago." Detective Rodriguez opened a thick file. At the time, it was processed as an accident. There were no witnesses and security camera footage was limited. Megan leaned forward. There was security camera footage. There was one camera installed near the park entrance. However, it didn't capture the playground area where the accident occurred. But, the detective showed a meaningful expression. "Now that I've heard your daughter's testimony, that footage is worth re-examining." The next morning, Megan waited at Emily's bedside for the detective's visit. Her daughter's consciousness was even clearer, and she could talk about much more than the night before. "Emily, can you tell the police officer what you told me yesterday?" Her daughter nodded slightly. "Will they catch that person?" "Yes. But for that to happen, we need you to tell us everything you remember." When Detective Rodriguez arrived, Emily was nervous at first, but gradually opened her heart to the detective's gentle manner of speaking. He had received specialized training in taking testimony from children and was extremely careful not to pressure Emily. "Emily, it might be painful to remember that day, but could you tell me slowly?" Emily began her testimony in a faint voice while holding her mother's hand. "I was playing on the slide. Katie and I were playing hide and seek, and I was hiding on top of the slide." Her daughter paused and took a deep breath. Then a pretty lady approached and said, "Hello. Can you describe that woman's characteristics in more detail?" "She had golden hair down to her shoulders. She wore white clothes and was very pretty. But her eyes were scary. Blue eyes that felt very cold." Emily continued, trembling. "At first she asked kindly, 'Are you playing alone?'" While listening to her daughter's testimony, Megan's mind conjured the face of a certain person. However, it was too unbelievable a possibility. "What happened next?" Detective Rodriguez gently prompted. The lady's face suddenly changed. She said, "If you disappeared, everything would work out," and pushed my shoulder. She pushed hard and I lost my balance and fell. Emily's testimony was clear and consistent. The detective continued with detailed questions, trying to grasp the full picture of the incident. "About that woman's clothing or belongings, do you remember anything else?" "She wore a big ring. I think it was an engagement ring. The diamond was very big and sparkled in the sunlight." Emily closed her eyes and traced her memory. "Also, she smelt of perfume. A very strong smell." After the testimony, Detective Rodriguez promised to re-examine the security camera footage. In the investigation 4 years ago, since it was processed as an accident, the footage analysis had also been superficial. 3 days later, the detective contacted her. Megan visited the police station again and reviewed the footage in a small conference room. "This is footage from 2 Uhr nachmittags to 4 Uhr nachmittags 4 years ago." The detective turned a laptop screen toward her. "It shows the park entrance and parking lot. The footage was unclear, but they could definitely see multiple people entering and leaving the park. The detective stopped the footage at a specific time. At 2:35 nachmittags, please pay attention to this woman. A blonde woman appeared on screen. White blouse, navy skirt, elegant walk. Only her profile was visible, but it matched the characteristics Emily had described. And at 3:10 nachmittags, the same woman exits the park. In this footage, the woman's expression was clearly visible. Compared to the first footage, she was obviously flustered. Her hair was disheveled and her clothing slightly disturbed. If we can identify this woman, the case will move toward resolution, Detective Rodriguez explained. I've asked an image analysis specialist to create clearer images. A week later, Megan was called to the police station again. This time, clearer footage and multiple photographs were prepared. We'd like your daughter to look at the photos, if possible. Emily visited the police station in a wheelchair. She still couldn't walk, but rehabilitation was progressing smoothly. The detective promised to keep the photo identification brief to avoid burdening her daughter. Emily, the woman from that day, might be among these. Look slowly, and if you see anyone familiar, please tell me. The detective laid out 10 photographs. Photos of blonde women of various ages. Emily carefully looked at them one by one, but stopped at the 7th photo. This person, Emily's voice was trembling. This person pushed me. Megan looked at the photo her daughter pointed to and felt the world spinning. In the photo was David's current wife, Nicole White. Are you sure? Megan asked her in disbelief. I'm sure. These eyes, this hair, I remember everything, Emily answered through tears. Detective Rodriguez explained with a serious expression. Nicole White, maiden name Nicole Thompson. Former nurse, currently married to your ex-husband. 4 years ago, she was having an affair with David White. In Megan's mind, all the puzzle pieces came together. Nicole's motive, the timing, and David's change in attitude after the accident. At the time, Nicole Thompson was 3 months pregnant, the detective continued. She was carrying David's child and was likely aiming for the position of legal wife. Megan stood up trembling. So Emily was in the way. She tried to kill my daughter. Combining circumstantial evidence and testimony, that possibility is high. We'll request an arrest warrant for Nicole White. That night, Nicole was arrested at her home. David was shocked by his wife's arrest and initially claimed the police were making a mistake. However, when shown Emily's testimony and video evidence, he turned pale and was speechless. During interrogation, Nicole initially denied everything, but gradually became cornered when confronted with evidence. Eventually, she confessed to the crime. As long as that child existed, David would never be completely mine, Nicole spoke in a cold voice. It wasn't planned. I happened to see Emily at the park and acted impulsively. However, the prosecutor's investigation revealed that Nicole had researched Emily's behavioral patterns in advance. She knew about the habit of going alone to Maplewood Park to play. Did you have intent to kill? The prosecutor asked. I wanted her to be disabled. But I never thought she wouldn't regain consciousness for 4 years, Nicole's words horrified everyone in the courtroom. After learning of his wife's crime, David was consumed with deep regret. He apologized to Megan and Emily, but the past was irreversible. The fact that he had abandoned his beloved daughter and married the perpetrator left deep scars on his life. Nicole White was charged with attempted murder and showed no remorse throughout the trial. To her, Emily was merely an obstacle to her happiness. That coldness chilled the hearts of Megan and Emily sitting in the gallery. On the day of sentencing, the judge sentenced Nicole to 15 years in prison. In the gallery, Megan held her daughter's hand tightly and shed tears of relief that justice had finally been served. Now that the truth was revealed, Megan and Emily's true healing was about to begin. The cause of 4 years of suffering was identified, and it was proven to be not an innocent accident but a calculated crime. However, the lost time and broken family bonds would never return. 6 months after the verdict, in spring, cherry blossoms were blooming at Maplewood Park. Megan sat on a bench with Emily, watching the petals flutter down. Her daughter still used a wheelchair, but thanks to rehabilitation, her upper body could move considerably. "Mommy, aren't you scared?" Emily looked up at her mother's face. "Coming here." "I was scared at first," Megan answered honestly. "But this was a place you loved. I didn't want it to be only bad memories." Emily smiled slightly. "I was scared at first too. But now I'm okay because I'm with Mommy." The two quietly watched the cherry blossoms. The tragedy that occurred in this park had fundamentally changed their lives. But now that the truth was revealed, Megan and Emily had regained the strength to live positively. After the verdict, David significantly increased child support. Not just from guilt, but from wanting to fulfill his responsibility as a father. He divorced Nicole and was raising his 2-year-old son alone. He sometimes visited Emily, but their relationship remained awkward. Rebuilding lost trust would still take a long time. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Emily said sweetly. "I brought lunch." "Your favorite sandwiches." Megan took out homemade sandwiches from the basket. Every time she saw Emily eating food on her own, Megan felt the miracle. Her daughter, who had only received nutrition through a feeding tube for 4 years, could now enjoy normal meals. Even the doctors were amazed by Emily's recovery speed. "Delicious," Emily chewed happily. "Mommy's sandwiches are the best in the world." Megan's heart warmed at her daughter's words. She remembered the 4 years of talking alone every day. Even then, she had believed that a day like this would come. And that belief had been correct. "Emily, do you remember what the physical therapist said? By next spring, I might be able to walk." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Then I can play on the slide again, right?" "Of course. This time I'll play with you too." While watching her daughter's growth, Megan realized she herself was changing too. The 4 years of lonely battle had made her strong. She no longer needed to depend on anyone else. She and her daughter could build happiness with their own strength alone. She continued her medical administrative work, but recently was seriously considering returning to nursing school. Through caring for Emily, her interest in medicine had deepened. She wanted to work supporting patients like her daughter and their families. That was the new dream she had gained from this painful experience. "Mommy, there's a butterfly over there," Emily pointed. A yellow butterfly was dancing around the cherry tree. Illuminated by spring sunlight, it seemed to glow. "Beautiful," Megan said while watching the butterfly. Butterflies sleep in their cocoons for a long time before being reborn in beautiful form. "Like us?" Emily asked. "Yes. We too went through a long, difficult time and became new versions of ourselves." As evening approached, the two headed home. As Megan pushed Emily's wheelchair, her daughter looked back. "Mommy, thank you." "For what?" "For staying by my side. For not giving up." Tears shone in Emily's eyes. "Daddy left partway through, but Mommy believed until the end." Megan stopped the wheelchair and crouched in front of her daughter. "Emily, you are my precious daughter. No matter what happens, I would never abandon you. That's what family means. Family isn't just about being blood-related, is it?" "That's right. True family are people who stay by your side without giving up no matter what. People who support each other and continue to love." Emily nodded as if savoring her mother's words. When they got home, Megan prepared dinner together with Emily. Her daughter still couldn't stand, but gladly helped with tasks she could do while sitting. Washing vegetables, mixing seasonings, even small things had meaning when they cooperated together. That night, as she put Emily to bed, Megan felt hope for the future. Her daughter's complete recovery might still take time. Financial struggles would continue. But she was no longer afraid. The truth was revealed, justice was served, and most importantly, Emily had returned. It was proven that their bond was stronger than any trial. Good night, Emily. Good night, Mommy. Will you be with me tomorrow too? Of course. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, forever. Megan kissed her daughter's forehead and left the room. Looking up at the starry sky visible from the living room window, she smiled quietly. The long stormy night was over. Now began the story of a new family built by mother and daughter together. Some people leave even when blood-related, while some bonds show their true value in difficult times. Megan and Emily were true family bound by the latter kind of bond. And that bond was the light of hope that would illuminate their future.